You asked, and we heard you, America.
Real America's Voice is coming to iHeartMedia.
Yes, Real America's Voice is now breaking through the white noise of the mainstream media.
Just download the iHeart app and you'll have all of us right at your fingertips.
Scan the QR code and start streaming RAV anywhere you want.
Real America's Voice, available whenever you need us.
It's never been easier to stay connected with the voices you trust.
RAV on iHeart means you can take us with you wherever you go.
This is huge. The truth on iHeart. Ready whenever you are.
From Charlie Kirk to Steve Bannon, Jack Posobiec to Grant Stinchfield, you'll find all your favorite RAV hosts in one place.
You can listen on Spotify, Apple, Pandora, or Amazon. RAV is now available everywhere you get your podcasts. All you need to do is scan the QR code right now.
Download the iHeart app today and get ready for Real America's Voice.
Scan the QR code and join the RAV movement.
Good evening, America. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you, as always, from Washington, D.C. And, of course, the WiredToFishCoffee.com studios. Wired to Fish Coffee is the official coffee of Just the News. Go over there today, WiredToFishCoffee.com. Wired, the number 2, fishcoffee.com. Or point your camera at that QR code. If you use the promo code Just News, you're going to get a fantastic 10% off on all of their great brews and their mugs, including the Just the News tumbler. Go check that out. It's pretty cool. All right. Donald Trump said we would never get tired of winning. Well, he keeps winning. Just a little while ago, he got a victory from a most unlikely source. Federal Judge Tanya Chutkin, the judge that presided over his criminal trials, who openly criticized the president in public, gave him a ruling that I think the administration was direly looking for. The judge ruled that Elon Musk does have the ability to fire workers and to access data in 7 federal agencies. You see that breaking news alert there from Just the News. Happened about an hour ago. A big loss for Democrats and their attorney generals in blue states. A big win for the president and his ability to reshape government with Elon Musk by his side. On another big win today, President Trump opened negotiations with his team, led by Marco Rubio, in Saudi Arabia with Russia. The first real meaningful conversations with Russia in 3 years, and they came out of it with a lot of progress. Discussions about reopening U.S. oil and gas operations in Russia, restoring diplomats to both countries that had left the country after the icy relations during the Ukraine-Russia war, and then finally creating teams that will actually start the negotiating process with Ukraine and possibly bring peace to the Russia-Ukraine war. Amanda, I know going into the weekend, a lot of reporters were saying, oh my God, you can't believe that Donald Trump's negotiating all alone with Russia. That's what happens. You negotiate with one side, the other side, you bring them together. But now all of a sudden they're singing a different song. Big wins today for President Trump.
Yeah, it's like general mediation. Anytime you mediate, you go to each side first and then you bring them together. That's how you actually get to some type of term. All right, everybody. So I do actually want to keep it short and brief today because I have a great clip that you're definitely going to want to see. But before we get to that, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer earlier today announced the Republicans who will serve on the task force that is set to declassify federal secrets like the Epstein and JFK files. Of course, we already know that Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna is going to lead that task force, but the committee also includes Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, Eli Crane, Eric Burleson, Brandon Gill, and Tim Burchett. That seems like a great group that is going to be digging into the truth and getting things done in Washington, D.C. And speaking of Congressman Burchett, he was on CNN earlier today, and they questioned him about DOGE and the Trump administration's cuts to government. It seems that they are none too happy about the size of government going down and down and down. I'm going to let you see it.
It's the way it's being done. The government is trying to claw back several employees who oversaw nuclear weapons after they were fired. The way this is being done is clumsy rather than methodical.
Again, you're upset about you're attacking the message carrier, not the results. You talk about nuclear secrets. You had a person who was in charge of nuclear secrets, a man who dressed up as a woman, would go into the airport and steal women's luggage, was overseeing those nuclear secrets under the Biden administration, and I never heard y'all say a peep about that. Again, man,
I don't know anything about that. I'll be transparent.
Have y'all even talked about, Mozambique? We sent them $10 million for circumcisions. Okay. I mean, goodness gracious, ma'am. Americans are paying
we've been covering at length
salaries.
Where the money is going to.
No, you haven't. All y'all do is run down Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and you continuously do this, and that's why your ratings are in the tank, ma'am.
Ouch. That left a mark.
Speaking of, John, I think we should get to our guest today.
Well, I'll be darned. Look who just joined us. Congressman Tim Burchett from the great state of Tennessee. Congressman, great to have you on. What an exchange. You know what's most amazing about the exchange? I don't think CNN realizes how biased they sound in that windup. They literally thought that was honest, neutral journalism. It wasn't, was it?
No, that's what you expect. I mean, dadgum. And I don't know what they expect when they put me on there other than all the girls in my office. The phones just light up from all over the country. All the liberal wackos start calling them and threatening us and everything. And I just tell them, just smile and say thank you and go on, because they're not, bless their hearts, they're not going to change. And I sure as heck am not.
That's for sure.
As my dad would say to me when I was growing up, they are cruising for a bruising, and boy, you always deliver. Sarah, I want to hit on something that I flicked at the top of the show, and that is this task force to declassify federal secrets. There are so many Americans, left, right, and center, who are very interested to see what will be revealed. Who and what are you going to tackle first?
Well, of course, UFOs are involved in that. We're spending tens of millions of dollars on something. Y'all have covered that extensively. The JFK files, that happened 60 years ago, before I was even born. I'm 60 years old. And now, miraculously, the FBI has found 14,000 new files last week or something, and these agencies, I think you've got people in them that are crooked as a dog's leg, which is sad because it just puts a bad mark on a lot of people. And you've got Bobby Kennedy's assassination. There's a lot of talk about that. His son, of course, is the new HHS secretary, and he's demanded some things, and he's put out some things that I think people ought to listen to. The assassination of Martin Luther King is another one, and of course the recent files on the island, the Epstein Island thing. But yeah, here's the thing, Luna, she called me and we were talking, and she's all excited, and everybody's excited about it. I'm just not excited. I'll believe it when I see it. Here we are 60 years plus into this deeper in some of the other issues, and yet we still never get to the bottom. Excuse me. I think the CIA is trying to poison me. No, but we got to get to the bottom of this stuff. That's why people don't trust this country. And y'all know it, because it's about power, it's about control, it's all the things that Washington's made of, and they continue on that path, and we've got to turn up the heat. I figure we've got 150 days of this before we start running off the rails. We lose our guts, which is my biggest fear, is what I told Marjorie Taylor Greene. I said, our problem's not those Marxists across the aisle, it's the people in our own conference that we're going to have a problem with, and you start watching them peeling off, because this is going to affect a lot of people. And these disclosures should be what every American's for. Dadgummit, it's your tax dollars. You ought to know what's in these files.
Yeah, we, the American people, are essentially the owners, and we've been denied all the access for so long. You said something profound, I think, in the CNN interview, which was that all that the media has is to demonize Elon Musk and Donald Trump, because they're shining a light, and neither the media nor their friends in government want that light, right? They're afraid it's ironic that media is afraid of the very transparency we used to argue for. How are Americans processing all this?
Well, I don't know about the rest of the country, but in Tennessee, Donald Trump and Elon Musk numbers are going through the roof, and they're, they can't comprehend the fraud. Today, there's several $1 trillion that are missing, that we'd have no idea where they went or who got it. And I suspect when some of those so-called 20-year-old kids figure this thing out, a lot of it they're going to show has come right back around in the pockets of politicians in Washington. And that's why they're trying to get these federal lawsuits in place so they can cover their tracks. Yeah. The number one search subject in Washington, D.C., do y'all know what it was last week?
No, what was it?
Attorney.
Criminal defense attorneys. Yeah. And then if you saw the for sale ads, it's going to be a good time to start buying some real estate in Washington, D.C. There's a heck of a lot of people moving out, and I'm glad to see it. But it's just the start. President Trump said we're going after education next, and then we're going after the military.
Yeah.
Defense attorney is also the top search when people find out that John Solomon is asking questions about him. Mr. Investigative Reporter. Sir, I want to ask you, with respect to bipartisan support or opposition for what DOGE is uncovering, when you consider so many of these people live and work in Washington, well, most of them live around Washington, but they work in Washington, does it say something about the partisan nature of the opposition, the fact that Washington, D.C. went 92.5% for Kamala Harris?
Yes, ma'am, it does. I think it says that they will sell this country out to keep the money flowing, and they'll do it every dadgum time. They hate our country. They hate our flag. They hate everything about us. All they like is that green hitting their pockets, and that green is being stolen from the American taxpayers. If you can imagine, we're paying 50%. If you add state, local, and federal taxes, along with all those hidden fees on everything that you buy, from beer to gasoline, people have had it, and we're sending $10 million to Mozambique for circumcisions. It's unbelievable, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. $40 million a week to the Taliban, and we found out last week. Representative Perry, my buddy Scott Perry out of Pennsylvania, found that we're actually sending billions to terrorist groups. There's a question of whether there's any gold at Fort Knox. There's a lot of things going on, and people better start paying attention. It shows you how close we were, the cusp we were on of losing this great nation.
Yeah, that's a great point to remember. So I want to start with, or go back to the news that we started the show with. Judge Tanya Chutkan, not exactly a fan of President Trump, but handing him a very big win today, saying Democrat attorney generals in the blue states did not show a reason to create an injunction and stop Elon Musk from looking at the DOGE data or from firing employees at workers at agencies where the president wants to make cuts. That's a big win coming from, well, a very liberal judge.
It is unelected bureaucrats. Now the Democrats are saying that about these unelected bureaucrats. Well, look at how many people have your records at the IRS, unelected bureaucrats. We've uncovered, it's been reported in the past that interns, people down to the intern level, have access to all your data. The IRS has been hacked multiple times, but guess what's never been hacked before? PayPal. And who owned PayPal? Elon Musk.
Congressman, something that has also been revealed is that when it comes to payments by the Treasury, some $5 trillion worth of payments have been unaccounted for. So I know one of the proposals is that we end the paper checks, everything's electronic, so you can at least track it. But even, I feel like, you hear these incredible stories about a box of paper clips costing taxpayers $10,000. If we save paper on sending out the checks, I feel like that's got to be, in spades, more than $10,000 for paper clips.
Yes, ma'am. Again, look who's hollering the most. They're the ones that have the most to lose, and they're probably the crookedest ones up there. So these people are crooked as a dog's leg, ma'am. That's an East Tennessee saying, but that means they're really crooked, and they're the ones squealing because they know it. And you got two groups. You got pawns. Some of these young kids, young liberals that are in Congress right now, and they think it's great that, I'm going to stick it to Elon Musk and Donald Trump. They don't even know who they are. Donald Trump or Elon Musk, he'll probably stub his toe on a bale of $100 bills tonight as he's crying over some freshman congressman taking a shot at him. Life's too dadgum short. Let's fix this problem. It can be a bipartisan thing. It can be beautiful, and we can come together as a nation. But the power brokers choose otherwise.
Yeah. So last night on the show, we had a Missouri state senator who wants to create a private ICE organization in his state, not a private, but a state-run organization, give bounties to people who turn in illegal aliens. You have some unique ideas for dealing with the cartels. Talk a little bit about one of your proposals that you're working on.
Well, it's called the Cartel Market, and thank you. I have it right in front of me. I wasn't sure, didn't know we were going to talk about it, but I'm Cartel Market and Reprisal Appropriations Act of 2025. And what it does, it creates the president's ability to hire military-type people to go after cartels out of the country. And it's actually constitutionally sound. In Article 1, Section 8, it provides for this. They were used in the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812.
Right.
And you've got all these former SEALs, Marine Raiders, all these other elite commando type units. These folks are well trained. They can do it a lot cheaper and a lot safer. They can get over the border without the media knowing about it and reporting where they're going to be. And they can do their business and get home. These cartels are evil. 300,000 children. I look at Neyland Stadium in Knoxville, Tennessee, Big Orange. 100,000 people every 7 Saturdays a year.
Right.
As you multiply by 3, that's the number of children that are in God knows where and what hell they're in right now because we've turned our back on that. And these men can go stop that in a moment's notice without a lot of hoopla. They can get it done and get back before the ink hits the pen. And so I think it's a great idea. It saves a lot of money. It's going to save lives, and we can end these cartels.
So much fresh thinking coming from conservative circles. They're leading with ideas, and that's always when the American people appreciate it. Congressman, such a great honor to have you on the show. You make us smile. You make us think. It's always an honor to have you on.
Well, thank you, Amanda. Thank you, John. Y'all are wonderful, and I love being on with y'all.
Yeah, we love
Pray for our country.
We shall. Thank you, sir. All right, folks, guess what? The biggest event, a political event in conservative politics is kicking off on Thursday morning. CPAC is here. Mercedes Schlepp, the grande dame of CPAC, is going to join us right after these messages. Hey, America, are you looking for a voice that really represents your values? AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens, was created to champion the needs of Americans who believe in faith, family, and freedom, like you and I do. With over 2 million members, their mission is simple but powerful: to protect the interests of all freedom-loving Americans, safeguarding Social Security and Medicare, and advocating for common-sense policies. Members gain access to incredible member benefits, including the award-winning AMAC magazine, from exclusive discounts on travel insurance and everyday services to a strong voice in Washington. AMAC is here to make a difference in your life and our nation. Joining AMAC isn't just about benefits, regardless of your age. It's about belonging to a community that stands for timeless American values. In honor of President Trump's first 100 days in office, AMAC is offering an incredible deal. Enroll in a 5-year AMAC membership like I do for 47% off. Normally $60. Join today for only $32. Visit amac.us/justnews today to take advantage of this special offer. That's amac.us/justnews. Join AMAC and become part of a movement that stands for your family and your future.
Welcome back to Just the News, No Noise. Well, it is that time of year, and that is that CPAC is just around the corner. It is starting tomorrow, and I know that because I've seen our tech guys running big equipment and boxes all across our office. It starts tomorrow, and it ends on Saturday, February 22nd. And, of course, America's Voice and Just the News are going to be there every step of the way with complete coverage top to bottom. So joining us now to discuss what we can expect from this year's event is CPAC Senior Fellow. She was also former White House Strategic Senior Advisor to President Trump, Mercedes Schlapp. Mercedes, thanks so much for being here.
Wow, two of my favorite people. This is so great. Thank you for having me.
This time feels different because I've been to a lot of CPACs, especially compared to 4 years ago. As we were just chatting, President Trump, obviously after the election of 2020 and then February of that next year, you guys effectively launched the comeback tour. That was when President Trump came out and really was giving strong indications that he was going to run again.
Well, I got to tell you, Amanda, Matt really took a lot of heat from his own board members who were telling him to disinvite the president during that 2021 election, following, that time frame after J6. And Matt said, no way, I'm not disinviting him. We are going to have him here. We have his back. We're going to let him know how much we love him and support him, and that we're going to make sure that we get him going once again. And I thought that was a very critical moment for President Trump during that speech that he gave, and knowing that he was still beloved by so many of us, that we were not going to give up and that we were going to keep fighting for him. And look what he's been able to do. Like, we've been through such dark times in our movement during those 4 years, not only the MAGA movement, but just America in general, under this leaderless Joe Biden and his administration. And now we get to celebrate and celebrate the victory. With that being said, and you all know this, we got to keep working hard every single day, because the left will regroup. The left will try to continue to destroy everything that President Trump is working on. And so we have an obligation to make sure that President Trump succeeds so that America can succeed.
Yeah, such a great point. I want to turn to another moment, a favorite CPAC moment of mine, because everybody is now used to calling Tulsi Gabbard the DNI, but back in 2022, the Republicans weren't sure what to make of her. She had just run for Democratic president. You gave her a forum at the Reagan dinner. I was there that night. When it started, people were a little nervous and hesitant. By the end of that speech, her defense of freedom was so extraordinary. You realized that a new conservative was born. Remind us how important that was. That was another moment where CPAC had to, take a few arrows to make a big, courageous move.
I know, and we love discovering or unraveling these superstars. And I think for Tulsi Gabbard, it was a conversation that Matt had with Tulsi, that Matt was saying, well, I have a lot of people mad at me because I invited you. And Tulsi said, yeah, I have a lot of people mad at me too for me going to speak at CPAC. And look at where we are today, really, truly, where she understood that her party had abandoned her, that her party turned on her, that her party basically called her a traitor and a Russian asset. I mean, how disgusting is that for someone who has served our country honorably and is just a brilliant woman and just someone who I respect greatly. And I'm so glad that President Trump picked her for DNI and to head that agency. And also, I want to add Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
That's right.
We invited him to speak at CPAC to just a smaller group of our investors. And even some of our big investors were saying, I don't know, I don't like this, I don't think I want to meet him. And then he spoke to the group. And he literally, they were like, okay, I don't agree with him on climate change, but I can agree with him on all these other things. Yeah. And so I really feel that CPAC, and I think really Matt just has an eye for it. He sees where the movement is going. He knows what we need to do to expand this movement. And it's why, John and Amanda, we're seeing this movement expand and basically explode internationally, where we have foreign leaders coming to speak at CPAC. We have delegations from different countries representing the conservative movement in these different countries coming to CPAC because they want to basically be inspired by what has been created here with the MAGA movement, take it back to their countries, get their members elected, and make sure that we fight the communists, fight the wokeism, and stop and make sure that they protect their freedoms. I mean, that's really the big call, the call to action that we have here in America, but also across the globe.
Yeah.
Well, and Mercedes, it's not just about bringing world leaders to CPAC here in D.C. I know we're all used to attending this CPAC, but it started as CPAC outposts all over the world, but now they have exploded. You guys having CPAC conferences in other places across the globe. Talk to us about those. Yeah.
You guys got to come with us. I mean, we got to do a RAV-like movement over there, because one of the things that we find in these other countries is that they have the problem with the fake news, right? They can't get just simple, clean, truthful news to the masses. And so, like, even in Poland, there's a great media organization called Republika. And guess what what the government's doing? They're trying to shut them down. They're trying to censor them. So they have to fight so much of this government censorship and this, the fact that because they're, center right, that they try to silence them. And so it is something that not only happens here in the U.S., but happens across the globe. And then when they're able to see, media organizations like RAV and social media influencers and podcasters being able to break through and get information to the masses, I think that's a huge victory. And that's why they're inspired by what they're seeing here in the U.S. and want to take it back to their countries. And so, it's going to be remarkable. We have our CPAC International Summit that we're opening up the conference with tomorrow, where we have delegates and leaders from a number of countries, where we do these kind of common share the best practices. What can we do to help each other? How do we network? How do we make sure that they know that they have allies here within the U.S.? And then, of course, we go straight into the conference, and our very own Vice President J.D. Vance was just announced he's opening up our conference. So it's going to be huge, just huge.
Buckle your seatbelt. That's going to be a fun one, especially after last week's speech in Europe. That was amazing. All right, you've got a great theme. America's back on track. And I want to ask what that is going to kind of message to the masses. And then secondly, who do you think is our biggest surprise fan? Who do you think people will be most surprised will be on stage this year?
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, well, let me start with America back on track. I think, first of all, we are in the celebratory mode. I think we're seeing President Donald Trump just dominate in terms of ensuring that he's moving quickly to implement his agenda, his America First agenda that we know is going to provide support and relief to American families, and also bring peace to the world. And look, he's been handed a lot of very complicated problems that were really ignored, that really the Biden administration just failed time and time again. And I remember President Trump telling us, look, I don't know if we're going to have enough time to turn this around. And that's why I think President Trump is working with such haste to turn things around. And you're seeing that positive impact, and you're seeing the broad support of the American people for him. Now, the biggest surprise, I can't really say, but I think there's going to be lots of different surprises. So I think we're going to see an incredible mix of cabinet members who are going to be joining us, in addition to actually, business leaders that have really impacted and shaped so many of our industries. And then, of course, you're talking about the social media influencers that have been in such an important role in basically helping to secure this victory as well. But, what I tell you, what I always love about CPAC, and you two will agree, it's the people. Yeah. It really is the people. It's the grassroots activists who literally come, they take it all in, they learn, they go back to their communities, and they're networking in the process. Sometimes they even find a spouse, which is just amazing to me. I love it. And the
CPAC love connection. Yeah,
I'm telling you, we have had engagements at CPAC happening.
That's
and
amazing.
Marriages. So I love it. I'm like total matchmaker. I think it's fantastic. So I think the key is that they can go back to their communities, feel empowered, run for office, help get involved in elections, and knowing that the fight is not done. We are just starting this fight. We are just starting to make sure that we keep America great and make sure that the American families have what they need to basically raise healthy children in safe environments, so that, we can continue to, basically enjoy the fruits of this great country. So those are, to me, the moments that I love, is being with the people, being with you all, and being able to, connect and stay connected in the CPAC family.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Listen,
with
one of the best places to find a spouse is church, but second best is CPAC.
That's
apparently.
right.
All right,
That's
so all of you
right.
youngins out there who are single, come to CPAC. Mercedes, before we let you go, speaking of youngins, we have seen this traditional family marriage values movement really taking over Gen Z. How does that play into the CPAC theme and, you know, these people who are coming up in politics?
Yeah, I got to tell you, it's so interesting. I've been doing some segments with just top conservative leaders who, with them and their spouses. So I did this with Jack Posobiec and Tanya Posobiec. I also did this with Terry Schilling and his wife, Katie Schilling, because I feel that if we need to understand that the family is the foundation of our society. If we can have stable and healthy families that are centered on Christ, centered on God, that are willing to basically fight against the evils of the outside world, we're going to make it. We're going to be able to build strong communities, strong families, and really strong churches. And I mean, and that's what you want to see. Those are the ingredients of like healthy societies, especially in Western civilization. And this is why you cannot allow the government to step in and, you know, try to indoctrinate your children. Because what are they trying to do? They're trying to divide and conquer. And our goal is to make sure that that family unit stays intact. With God in the center of it. And I think that watching this movement, and now that I have 2 college kids, and I really believe, guys, my 2 college kids, I think they're going to be married in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. I'm like freaking out because I'm like going, I mean, they'll be graduated by then. But like, I would have never thought about getting married at 21. I was like, career.
Right.
Well, the reality is you end up with a lot of emptiness if you don't have these fulfilling relationships in your life. I'm not saying everybody has to get married, but finding these fulfilling relationships in your life are critical in really having true joy and true happiness.
No, I couldn't agree more.
Well, for your 2 kids and all the other college-age kids out there who are not married, everybody come to CPAC and everybody else come.
That's right.
Go
to CPAC.org for tickets.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Everybody, CPAC.org for tickets. CPAC Senior Fellow Mercedes Schlapp. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, everybody, coming up after the break, more on those JFK files that President Trump ordered to be released. When are we going to see them? What is it going to look like organizationally? Stay with us after that.
Welcome back, America. Transparency is breaking out all over D.C., something that we're not used to here. A light being shined on things that used to be secret. One of the first big bounties that we're likely to get is the next a set of documents from the JFK assassination records. Joining us right now is someone who studied it for years and hopefully will help us explain how the FBI found 14,000 documents 60 years later. He's a lawyer. He's one of the great researchers on this topic, Larry Schnaff. Larry, great to have you on the show.
Hi there. Good to be here.
All right. You've sued the government many times. You tried to force so much of the transparency that we're just about to get. What do you think will be the big surprises in what's left and about to be turned over?
Well, we have two issues in front of us. There's what's in the JFK collection, which is the records that were transferred to the National Archives during the 90s when the Records Review Board was tasked with scouring the government for records.
Right.
But the real story is what's not in the collection. Because this we discovered this week, there were 2,400 FBI records, which are about 14,000 pages, that mysteriously showed up, which calls into question the good faith effort that was done. Was there a good faith effort done in the 1990s to find all these records? And in fact, when the Records Review Board went out of business in 1998, their job wasn't done. There were still records to be searched for, including records of the CIA, records that are in the possession of the JFK library. It's the RFK Family Trust. Bobby Kennedy took records out of the White House within an hour after the president was killed. Right. And we haven't seen those. We don't know what they say. Wow. There's sealed tapes of Carlos Marcello where he allegedly confessed to being behind the assassination. Those tapes have been sealed and haven't been released. And we have FBI records, obviously, now that we found out. There's also records we discovered recently, the existence of them. They're not in a collection, but we learned that the CIA did its own investigation the week of the assassination. They went to Miami and they were interviewing exiles and Cubans to see if anyone was behind the assassination. We've never seen those records results.
So much to look forward to.
Larry, when it comes to the concealment of this information, many Americans are at least suspicious over the fact that the government was involved to some degree. Is the main concern with the concealment the fact that if that concealment goes away, if there is transparency, then those suspicions will be affirmed?
So it's a couple of things. The immediate explanation that Mike Pompeo told President Trump in Trump 1.0 was that he had to protect the names of people in these records. Claiming that if we made promises to people in the 1960s who were undercover for us, and then we revealed their names now, that they would not be able to get new people to go undercover for us now because they can't trust our promises. So that was the official excuse that was given. I don't think there's a smoking gun that says, here's how we're going to kill President Kennedy. But I think there's a lot of documents there that could sort of add some flavor for historians to kind of put the pieces together as to what was suspected, what leads they had and didn't look for. And obviously, the reason there was this Warren Commission was as much to assure our allies in Europe that we were not a banana republic. Right. The allies in Europe were convinced that Kennedy was killed by a right-wing conspiracy. And this was as much for foreign consumption as it was for domestic consumption.
Fascinating. Yeah, isn't that amazing? Obviously, these 14,000 pages, 2,400 records from the FBI probably weren't at the disposal of the Warren Commission. What does that say about the last most relevant time we did a review that maybe we didn't have all the evidence in either?
Well, we know there are records that are in the possession of the federal government that were not transferred to the archives, which they were required to do under the Act. And the FBI and the CIA dragged out. This has been the CIA's MO from the beginning.
Sure.
Angleton, who was the head of the counterintelligence, basically said, we're going to wait out the Warren Commission. And then they waited out the House Select Assassinations Committee, and they waited out the Records Review Board. So they know there's a clock running, and they just delay and refuse to cooperate. And eventually, the body goes away. Now, the National Archives entered into an agreement with the CIA and the Records Review Board in '98. When they went out of business, they were going to continue to pursue these outstanding requests that the ARB had made. and they never followed up. And that's why we sued the National Archives, the Mary Farrell Foundation, which I co-represent with another counsel. We sued President Biden and the National Archives for failing to pursue these record searches, and that litigation is ongoing. And then I had also sued the National Archives after President Trump went out of when Biden took over to find out what really happened. What was the real story behind the Trump postponements? Because President Trump said 2 days before the October 24th, 2017 deadline to release the records, he said on Twitter, "I'm going to release the records." And then suddenly he changed his mind, and we wanted to know what happened. And as it turns out, the National Security Council hijacked the process. And, you're supposed to show, to hold a record back, you have to show there's an identifiable harm to national security that is of such gravity that it outweighs a strong public interest in disclosure. What possible national security grounds could there be 60 years later that's so important? And the National Security Council just basically took their position that it's in the public interest to hide these records. Now, the good news is President Trump has fired about 150 people in the National Security Council. So maybe a lot of the people that were resisting disclosure are now gone. And we're hoping that he won't hit that his order is not only going to result in the release of the records that are in the collection, but I sent a letter to the White House counsel, David Warrington,
very important,
right after the order was issued, asking him to make sure that they search for all the records that are still in the federal possession, not just those in the collection.
That's a great point.
Larry, before we let you go, this obviously was 60 years ago. There are still people living who are directly connected. They would be in their 80s. Are there people still living who have a very vested and direct interest in this not going public?
Well, there's more of an institutional incentive because there would be embarrassment to the CIA and the FBI and the Secret Service if the truth came out. But there are some individuals that perhaps are aware of things that happened and their names have been withheld. So we can't interview them while their names are redacted. And if the policy that the government's been using is we don't release their names until they die. But that's not what the statute says. The statute says you have to show there's an imminent harm to them.
Right.
And so they're hiding these names. We find out about them after they die. We can't interview them. So there are people there may be witnesses who were never interviewed. Or there may be people that, let's say, in the mafia or the low levels of the CIA operations or in the Cuban exile community that might have some knowledge that haven't been talked to because we don't know who they are.
So important. Well, you've been relentless in your pursuit of the truth, and I hope this final mission will get us the answers that we've long been denied. Larry, what a great honor to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, great discussion. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, President Trump has taken a sledgehammer to the bureaucracy and isn't going over well with some here in Washington. We'll talk much about that in the next block.
Welcome back to Just the News, No Noise. The Trump administration has been ruffling some feathers, that's a euphemism, here in Washington, and to his voters, that is a breath of fresh air because it is exactly what his base wanted. But to politicians and the media, it's not so welcomed. All right, so with us to discuss some of the reasons why the entrenched Washington elite are so upset with the president is investigative columnist at the Daily Signal, Tony Kennett. Tony, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Good to be with you both.
Oh boy, DOGE is revealing a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. Chief among that is, sending off payments to foreign countries for DEI measures and trans operas and all manner of crazy things. When it comes to Democrats getting back on track and supporting what actually matters to their base, are they any closer than they were after the election?
Are they any closer than they were after the election? No. In fact, they're further away, and it's bewildering to see because the line seems to be, well, actually, there's a lot of waste and fraud, and it's a good thing. I'm not really sure that telling the public, as CBS and 60 Minutes did, well, it was just $38 billion of spending in 2023 for USAID. And that was spending that didn't go to the victims of Hurricanes Milton and Helene, the wildfire survivors of Maui or California. I mean, there are a lot of Americans who could use some national development. I don't think that we need to be focusing so heavily on international development while those are still untaken care of.
Yeah. Tony, you've done some great work. Your columns are brilliant. And I think this alliance that we have between the administrative state, the news media that likes to protect the administrative state, who often know their sources, and then NGOs who get money and then make sure that the whole thing stays together, the secret stays together. The busting of the nonprofits, the non-governmental organizations, exposing them for their middleman role in this, that seems to be one of the big themes that Elon and the president are beginning to develop. How big a player are these nonprofits in the government machinery?
Oh, they're a massive player. In fact, they are somehow wedged into every single piece and function of the government bureaucracy, and they masquerade as all kinds of things. They pretend to be charitable organizations that are just out here to do the common good. And by that, I mean they're spending taxpayer money, which is allotted by Congress to do specific things. They're then taking that, using it in entirely different methods for entirely different reasons to advance causes that are not what Congress outlined those funds for. And then when you press them on it, you say, hey, we're just the insert name here charity. We love working for the American people. And in this case, it's actually Guatemalan gang members who are trying to gain illegal access to the United States, like the so-called church charity was helping, and they weren't helping anyone at all.
Tony, one of the rallying cries against what is happening that I hear from Democrats is that it is breaching American citizens' private data. But as Elon Musk has brought up, he's like, I used to be at PayPal. I had access to all sorts of information, not to mention now at Tesla. Your Tesla vehicle has all sorts of information, maybe even biometrics. Is it a trustworthy process to allow someone like Elon Musk, again, an unelected bureaucrat, to have this?
Can I ask you guys a question? Because this is something that maybe I'll be able to solve later on tonight when I'm broadcasting. If Elon Musk had your social security number, he has your social number right now. What's he going to do with it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, really. I really want to know.
Need it?
I mean, what is exactly? He's the richest man on earth. What is he going to do with my social security number? And he doesn't. Again, he owned PayPal. He had my number for finance and my bank account numbers long since. If he wants to audit some member of Congress, or he wants to audit some bureaucratic process like the Social Security Administration, wasting billions of dollars on the dead, and not even on the care of their grave sites, but on mysterious finances disappearing into the ether, yeah, I say audit it twice as hard, twice as fast, and I'm here for it all the way.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I don't think people are really that concerned. And by the way, these scare tactics aren't resonating with the American people. The polling shows, and particularly young people, actually kind of like what Elon Musk is doing. It's really fascinating. Where will congressional Republicans, not always the most courageous of crowd, end up in shrinking this? I'm beginning to see some people starting to yelp a little bit. Oh, we're going to cut that. Wait a second. Will Republicans take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to shrink government and shrink the power of government, return the ownership of the government back to the American people?
Well, they won't do what it is that I would prefer, which is burn several of these agencies to the ground. Sorry, I'm a Hoosier. That Ron Swanson libertarianism comes out every once in a while. But I will say that I do think we're going to see a lot of Congress members do more than is expected. And that's because I believed that the greatest power of the Department of Government Efficiency wasn't just to participate in audits, but was to focus all of the United States ire on individual Congress members who are refusing to represent their constituents and to do what they were elected for. We saw this during the early confirmation process. That's worth its weight in platinum.
Yeah, I agree.
Tony, I want to ask you about this plea from Jim Acosta for mainly legacy news organizations to get together and boycott the Trump administration. What does that even look like for them?
I mean, it looks like quitting CNN because they shoved you to the middle of the night. This is like, I can't. Sorry, Jim Acosta brings a smile to my face, because if there's someone that I really want running the rallying flag, it's the guy who couldn't even figure out how to handle things in the first Trump administration. Now he's back to showboat again, and I would rather put scissors directly through my computer screen than listen to Jim Acosta.
Yeah,
I think Margaret Brennan's starting to move up the back on that list too.
Oh, that's
Keep
true.
an eye on her. She's moving up that list too.
You've got the media so spun up in circles that you have Margaret Brennan telling people that free speech was the reason why the Holocaust happened. It's quite unbelievable. Their heads are spinning, and smoke is coming out their ears, and their hair is on fire. But what's new? Tony Kennett, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have you back on again very soon.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, what a great reporter he is.
All right, everybody, we have one more segment coming up after this, so stick around and we'll be back on the other side. Welcome back, everybody. We've got a guest for this final segment where we're going to slide in some confirmation news.
Yeah, two big moments. Just a few seconds ago, the Senate advanced Kash Patel's FBI director nomination for a final vote as early as Thursday. And he could be FBI director on Friday morning. 8:45, a pretty tight vote there. We'll keep an eye and see what that means for the final vote. And then shortly after that, the Senate confirmed formally Howard Lutnick to be our Commerce Secretary. He'll be sworn in as early as tomorrow. Two more very important pieces of the president's leadership team. He's pretty much got his whole team in place. You're going to be writing about this tomorrow, just how quickly Trump has been moving, but a big moment.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, before we head out for the evening, I want to get to the state that I just left to come here. Of course, many in the state of California lost their homes a few weeks ago due to the devastating fires in and around Los Angeles. But California Governor Gavin Newsom seems more concerned with what is going on in Washington than his own state. He recently approved $50 million in funding to Trump-proof California. I don't know what that means. Actually, I do know what it means. It's for legal defense, but he should have been doing fireproofing instead of Trump-proofing his state, and things might have turned out a little bit better. So we're going to bring in the chairwoman of the California Young Republicans, Arianna Ossenmacher. Arianna, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Newsom's goal is not to help Californians. It's to stay in the national media and be a headline and a common name for households across America.
Yeah, really interesting. All right, there's a fascinating thing going on. We had Rich Barris, the pollster, on last night, and he said that Gen Z voters are flocking to Donald Trump and more excited about Donald Trump than anyone else in politics right now. Also, Elon Musk. Tell us a little bit about the dynamic among young people, young Republicans, and what's going on right now.
Definitely. Republican legislators in California are forcing issues that matter at the state level. So we're talking about the passing of Proposition 36, which helps with crime, which Newsom did not support, and wildfire management. You obviously mentioned the wildfires here. Newsom opposed over $150 million in 2023 by cutting funding, and now he's actually begging for federal aid to help with this wildfire management. So Republicans are trying to fight for these issues that are not political in nature. They appeal to everybody here in this state, and we're hoping to carry that momentum into 2026.
Absolutely. Ariana, I agree with you that Gavin is obviously trying to keep his name in the headlines, but considering the issues that California has had, major deficit issues, not to mention the wildfires, it seems like his name has been in the headlines for not so great reasons. Do you anticipate him moderating at some point so that he can maybe find some middle ground for the rest of America?
I do not, actually. I mean, he's spending $50 million in taxpayer money for legal defense of illegal immigrants, even those with a criminal record. Funds are being given to far-left nonprofits to exploit our political system right now, and he's ignoring legal immigrants who have been fighting for a pathway to citizenship for years. He doesn't care about the California citizens or the voters here. He cares about his 2028 presidential run.
Well, we shall see how that goes for him. Ariana Asemacher, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We'll have you back on. Get some more California news.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, John, I want to highlight something that popped up today in my news feed because President Trump signed an executive order on IVF, and I know that this is somewhat of a touchy issue, especially in Catholic and evangelical circles, but what I am seeing and hearing from, and this is a cultural thing too, because you have a lot of women of my generation who were sold the story that you should prioritize your career over family.
Right.
And a lot of times these women lean left, and now they are finding themselves in a place in life where they want to have children, but their biological clock is fighting against them. So I think this might be a really interesting issue that President Trump might bring some folks from the other side on.
It's definitely an instinctual issue, right? He got this during the campaign. He saw the blowback during the campaign of some Republican states trying to limit IVF and stepped into the void, right? Your home state of Alabama. And I think he balanced the issue great for the election. I think here, all he's trying to do is show some compassion. Why should it cost $20,000 if it can be made cheaper? So he's trying to help families who want to have families or more children to get it in a way that's cost effective. And, he's fighting inflation. This is an unusual inflation fighter, but I think it's one that's very personal to families who are going through the struggle. I bet you it's a winner no matter what the evangelical pushback is on this or Catholic pushback. I think it's a winner.
More babies. Who doesn't want more babies? All right, so you mentioned this at the top of the block. Kash Patel, on to the next step, the final vote on Thursday, but for this round it was 48 to 45.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if some people have sat out the vote because they voted in a larger number for Howard Lutnick. No matter what it is, if they get a simple majority vote, they've got it. And it'll be very interesting to see where that ends up. But I think Kash Patel's on his way to being nominated or being confirmed, and the FBI about to be reformed in a way that we can't imagine. Maybe we won't have 60 years from now 14,000 pages of documents withheld from us again 60 years from now.
Won't that be nice? Won't that be nice? Although I do kind of feel like, especially with respect to the JFK stuff, it's like we just keep on getting kicked and then we come back for more. And every time we think it's going to happen and it doesn't. So I'm with Larry. Sometimes it can be a little disappointing.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, everybody, that's all the time we have for this evening. But we will see you back here at 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. And then we will see you at 6 p.m. Eastern from CPAC on Thursday and Friday. Grant Stinchfield is going to take you through the next hour. See you tomorrow.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Stinchfield. So Elon Musk and his DOGE team continue to uncover waste, fraud, and abuse. The number is staggering. The rate at which he's uncovering all of this is staggering. And the latest news to come out is DOGE has found $4.7 trillion being paid out of the United States Treasury is like totally unaccounted for. Gone into what a government black hole, as the Gateway pundit calls it. So we have no clue where this $4.7 trillion has gone. Now, why do we not know that? Because apparently the ID code, something called the Treasury Access Symbol, TAS, was left blank. Supposed to be filled out. But when you don't fill out the identifier, you can't track where the money went. So now we have $4.7 trillion unaccounted for. Okay, remember, I'm going to say we spend $7 trillion a year. This is outrageous. Elon says, well, now that code will be required on all transactions. This is Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank.
Fat like a chicken. All of these agencies are like big fat chickens dripping over barbecues of fat. This is the best barbecue I've ever seen, but I don't think it's happening fast enough. They're not cutting enough. Keep slashing, keep hacking while you have a 24-month mandate before the midterms. Cut. More cutting. Believe me, it's going to work out just great.
Look at the folks on CNN. They don't know what to think. Of course it's going to work out great. Inflation, the number one driver of inflation is government spending. You got $4.7 trillion unaccounted for. Trillion. Now imagine if the IRS comes looking at you, auditing your business, or you as an individual taxpayer. If you don't have a receipt from going to Chili's, they're going to hunt you down like a dirty dog. And yet $4.7 trillion, no receipts needed. Really quite unbelievable. Stunning. Department of Education. Apparently, $881 million in grant money has been totally cut. $600 million of that has been cut was for DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. This is what has been canceled, okay? Requiring teachers personal responsibility for systemic inequities, training for that, canceled. Workshops for dismantling racial bias canceled. Listen to this. Providing targeted practices in culturally relevant, responsive teaching, abolitionist pedagogies, and issues in diversity management. Now, folks, if I can't tell you what that even means, do you think we should be spending hundreds of millions of dollars on it? I don't think so. Well, of course, all of this has the Democrats going into meltdown because the everyday American sees what this is all about. Waste.
Before they even know what's what, just slashing systems. It's when that is the story on one hand, and then there are other things playing out. You go to the store, there's no eggs in the in the fridge. You see planes crashing left and right. You hear about a bird flu, and you hear, on the other hand, about scientists being fired at NIH. At some point, people may connect the dots, and they may come to blame this administration, this government, if they have just bulldozed their way through government, taken out a lot of expertise.
These people will lie straight to your face. Joe Biden killed millions of birds because of the stupid bird flu that causes an eye infection, okay? Millions of birds he killed. That's why eggs are up. And the last plane that crashed was in Canada. Has nothing to do with the FAA. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. How does the old saying go? But wait, there's more. Elon Musk and his team of DOGE investigators found $14 million for improving public procurement. Well, that sounds good, except they're securing that public procurement in Serbia. $29 million for strengthening political landscape in Bangladesh, not America. $47 million for improving learning outcomes. You ready for this? In Asia. Now, the last place that needs to improve on their academics is Asia. They got us beat 6 ways to Sunday. And, of course, $14 million for social cohesion. Not in Los Angeles or New York that could use some social cohesion, but in Mali. By the way, I don't want to be spending $14 million on social cohesion in the United States either. Which brings us now to Social Security and the absolute disaster that this agency has turned out to be, with just ripe for fraud and abuse. Listen to this.
There was an Inspector General audit last year that showed over an 8-year period, the Social Security Administration made almost $72 billion in improper payments, a little less than 1% of payments in that time period. Now, the report also says that most of these improper payments were overpayments, not payments to deceased people or people who didn't qualify.
All right, that's last year's report. Now, once Elon got in there, we think that number is now $1.5 trillion. And remember, we run a deficit of $2 trillion. So just in Social Security. Remember, yesterday we showed you, thanks to Elon, you have 25 million people apparently over the age of 100. And it looks like they're marked as alive, quite possibly collecting Social Security. So here's my question. One, how are we sending out those checks? And number two, here's what we really need to know. Who in the world is cashing them? And if you're cashing checks for a dead person, I actually believe you're a criminal as well. Now, I don't think the deep state wants any of this uncovered because the acting commissioner of the Social Security Administration has stepped down, allegedly stonewalling DOGE. And here we go with the deep staters defending her. This is a former administrator of that agency, running to her rescue.
And I think it says a lot about the disregard of the law and disregard of people's personal identifying information that this new DOGE crowd has, that Michelle would have the integrity to say, look, I'm out of here. I'm not going to be an accomplice in committing these crimes.
You know what's hilarious? They're so concerned about Elon Musk and the DOGE crowd having access to your personal information. Not to mention, you probably have some $50,000, $60,000 clerks all across the country that have access to your personal information. Elon Musk is a billionaire with a top secret security clearance working on rockets for the United States government, and that's who they're worried about, not the thousands of people around that have access to this that we really have no idea even who they are. We know, as I mentioned, $1.5 trillion possibly in waste, fraud, and abuse out of the Social Security Administration alone. Now, HUD, Housing and Urban Development, I want you to check this out. $1.9 billion had been earmarked for financial services. These are the receipts that Elon came up with. $1.9 billion. Well, guess what? HUD no longer needed the services. So what do you think happened to the $1.9 billion? It just got lost into some random bank account. Well, thankfully, Elon found it, and it's been put back in Treasury, now available for use in other places, hopefully to pay down debt. Now, the left freaks out over all this. They say, well, they're firing everybody. Right now, by my count, it looks like about 2,300 positions have been eliminated. They have accepted the resignations of close to 75,000 federal employees. And this is a small drop in the bucket to the federal workforce, by the way. And yet, again, the left loses their minds. But we have Stephen Miller to push back against the left's lost minds.
I understand that even a temporary interruption in federal employment is a great crisis and catastrophe for you and for CNN. What the American people see is a government that is finally delivering a promise of accountability under President Trump.
Amen. That's all we want, is this government reined in. And I will tell you, I knew that there was wasteful spending out there. For decades, I've been screaming and yelling about this. The extent of which I think even I underestimated. Well, with me now is the director of the Heritage Foundation's Federal Budget Center. Richard Stern is back with us. Richard, welcome back.
Always a pleasure.
Richard, every day we are learning something new here, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. Look, DOGE has been the most amazing thing I've seen in my entire time in D.C. As you pointed out, DOGE has gone through and put a spotlight on decades and decades of corruption, of just absolute manipulation of your taxpayer dollars, laundering money abroad, laundering money through Social Security and all these other programs, and it has finally come out in the sunlight for everyone to see. And, Polymarket started a tracker for the cuts, and their tracker is already at $55 billion of spending cuts under DOGE. That's more than Congress has ever cut in one sitting.
It's amazing, really, to watch it. And then here's what's interesting. These deep staters, sometimes they make the argument against themselves. They don't even realize it. I heard one government administrator say, you mean to tell me all this spending had gone through committee after committee, and then it had gone through congressional committees, and then it had gone through. And I'm like, yes, it went through there. Yes, they probably knew about the spending and didn't do anything. This is the reason why we need Elon Musk, and they make it as an argument as why we don't. Really quite backwards, Richard.
Oh, absolutely. But this just shows you just how deep the woke-topus, as we like to call it at the Heritage Foundation, goes. Credit to Tyler O'Neill, the Daily Signal, on that one. But, that's part of this, right? The D.C. cartel has its hooks and its claws in absolutely every inch of D.C., and that includes, quite tragically, a lot of the members of Congress and their staff who are on these committees who keep this spending going year after year, decade after decade, and including, as you pointed out, the 2.2 million strong army of federal civil servants, of course is a loose term, who again funnel this money to their friends, their donors, to activist groups that they support. And so again, DOGE is just showing you literally 50, 60 years of this kind of corruptive revolving door between Congress and the executive branch.
Yeah. Again, the Democrats are on the wrong side of this. I've heard a few Democrats, a very, very few, come out and say, hey, you know what, we ought to embrace this because, by pushing this craziness that somehow we're doing something wrong by uncovering all this waste, fraud, and abuse, that will backfire on the Democrats as well. Our very good friend on this program, Tim Burchett, he's congressman from Tennessee. Viewers will know him when they see him. He comes on an awful lot here. He's great at firing back. He went on with CNN. Watch this interaction, cut 4.
Do you think, Congressman, that is a fair point, that the way this is being done is clumsy rather than methodical?
Again, you're upset about you're attacking the message carrier, not the results. You talk about nuclear secrets. You had a person who was in charge of nuclear secrets, a man who dressed up as a woman, would go into the airport and steal women's luggage, was overseeing those nuclear secrets under the Biden administration, and I never heard y'all say a peep about that.
Richard Stern, you want to respond?
Yeah, you can't make this stuff up, and that is just the tip of the iceberg of how bad this is. But, the other part, and this is something that Elon has made, and I think it's a brilliant point on this, is that all of these are people who are negatively contributing to society because the jobs that they're working are counterproductive. They're not just stealing luggage at an airport, but even when they're doing their jobs, they're creating new regulations. They're funneling your taxpayer dollars to woke groups that, quite frankly, sue to stop oil from being extracted from lands, that sue to stop factories from being constructed in the U.S., let alone hundreds of other things. And so every time the government spends these dollars, it is stealing those dollars from you, either through your taxes or by printing more money at the Fed and either driving up inflation rates or by driving up interest rates on mortgages and small businesses. So all of this is a cost you are paying for, the productive part of the United States, to pay people to sit around and create new regulations and make it harder for this country to move forward.
Well, I'll tell you what, I couldn't put it better myself, and it is so true. But finally, we're getting some action here. And I think, President Trump said he did more than Biden did in 4 years. I've never seen a president do as much as he's done in 3 weeks than this president. And that's just not because I'm biased, because I love this president. But this is the absolute truth. We really are on the right track. Heritage has played a big role in exposing some of this stuff as well. And we appreciate that. And we appreciate you, Richard Stern, for coming on, as always.
Well, always a pleasure. Thank you. And yes, it's nice seeing the administration actually keep their promises.
It sure is. Promises made, promises kept. And you know what, folks, maybe just for fun, one more Tim Burchett, because he's such a character. Let's roll the other clip from him.
These are bloated programs. You have no-show employees that are angry that they're having to go back to work, that they've moved, and they're not.
No one's disagreeing. There's bloat and waste.
Jobs were.
No one's disagreeing.
Well, then why are y'all not exposing it? Have y'all even talked about, hey, Mozambique, we sent them $10 million for circumcisions? Okay. I mean, goodness gracious, ma'am. Americans are paying
we've been covering at length
salaries
where the money is going to.
No, you haven't.
I love that guy. I'm telling you. I mean, literally, she does not want to talk about $10 million to circumcise African men. I mean, you can't make this up. I'm laughing, but how sad is it? Really, how freaking sad is it? Here's what I am happy about. The border looks like it's finally shut down. People will get across. You're never going to have 100% closed. But, man, crossings are down 90%. Gotaways down 90%, I think the number is. This is unbelievable. And this is a huge tribute to not just the Trump administration, but the men and women working the line now. They are out actually doing their job, chasing down criminals. Our own Ben Berkwam was with them. He spent a lot of time with them. Take a look at this.
Yeah, that's definitely a dump spot. So they'll come down here, dump some of their clothes, change clothes, and think that Border Patrol won't recognize them when they show up on the trail. No, sometimes they'll actually try to walk in down the trail like they're locals just up here for a hike. It's funny because they're so obvious, So just speaking about the clothes that were left on the trail there, we got a group of 3 illegals coming down here. They were trying to blend in, walking down the trail. Looks like we got 2 more females walking up the trail, pretending like they're just out for a hike. Anthony spooked them, and they started running. And now they're trying to run back up. Right as we catch that guy, we got another group of 10 right up here on the mountain, waiting for their chance to go. The cartel's getting really frustrated.
Getting frustrated because finally Border Patrol's allowed to do their job and they're catching these illegal aliens as they're heading into the United States. Well, joining me now is RAV correspondent Ben Berkwam, who was recently embedded with Border Patrol at the U.S.-Mexico border. He's now in Washington, D.C., getting ready for RAV's CPAC coverage. Ben, good evening to you.
Hey, Grant. Great to be with you again, sir.
All right. You had said at the end of your piece there that the cartels are getting frustrated. I would imagine that could also turn dangerous. I don't know if they start taking pot shots at Border Patrol, even yourself, but explain to me more on how you know they're getting frustrated by all this.
Well, because their routes are basically closed down. You saw that Sulik, that Borstar, just hero there, the guy who caught the one, and he caught several others while I was with him. He was out there saying that they've plugged it. So we asked the question, the difference between 4 years ago to now, and he said it's like a wound. These guys are medics. They're also the tactical response unit for Border Patrol, and he said it's like a wound. The way I stop a wound from gushing blood is I plug it. He said that's what we're doing. We're plugging the holes on the border. President Trump's allowed us to do that. We're taking our country back. And so what that's done is force the cartel, who makes now as much money, in some cases more money, on human trafficking, to find new ways of doing it. And for a couple of weeks, they kind of slowed down. They backed off. I mean, Joe Biden put billions of dollars in their pocket, so they probably can take a little break. But you can tell just based on what I saw that day. This was just on Friday. They're pushing through different areas. They're running in. They're just frustrated. You can feel it. You can feel the anxiety when you're down there. And you're right. They're already starting to shoot in the El Paso sector, which I was in. They've already had 4 active shooter situations. So that's already started, and I believe that's only going to get worse as this continues. It's why it's so critical that President Trump responds with the terrorist, declaring these guys terrorists, which he's already done, and actually treating them like terrorists, which they are.
Yeah. I believe we need to declare war on the cartels and actually go into Mexico and take them out as if we were at war with them. I think that would do us some good. Let me play another clip from you. You caught up with one of these illegals that had been arrested as you were out with Border Patrol. Take a look.
What were you doing up here?
Walking.
Why off the trail? Why'd you run from these guys?
I don't know.
You just ran? Is that normal?
No, it's normal.
Were you coming to pick up?
Monday?
Were you coming to pick up illegals?
Ben, who do you think that guy is? I mean, he speaks English. I'm shocked.
Yeah, well, so supposedly he had some documentation saying that he was an American citizen. What I believe he was the pickup. So when I caught these guys, when Anthony and I caught these guys going down the trail, they were on the phone. They were actually walking down to get to the car pickup point. They were on the phone with, I believe, their handler. I believe it was that guy. But there apparently wasn't enough evidence. So Border Patrol ended up having to let that guy go, although we did catch one of the other guys that was here illegally, which again, I believe was going to get picked up. Now, so just so people understand this too, American citizens are a part of this. You've got cartel members in America that are working with the cartels of Mexico on U.S. soil. So this is not a new thing. It's not a surprising thing. This guy was off on the backside of the mountain when Border Patrol showed up. He ran away from them. No doubt in my mind, that's what he was there to do. But unfortunately, if you don't have the evidence, sometimes law enforcement has to let him go. And that's what happened that day. But I was happy to make him famous.
Look, it's still a crime even for an American citizen to cross the border not at an official port of entry. You have to go check in. The problem is it's not a felony. I've been screaming and yelling for a long time. The first time you cross in illegally, it ought to be a felony. Even if you're a United States citizen, it ought to be a felony unless you've gotten approval to do it with Border Patrol. I appreciate you following all this, Ben. You're one of the few, you, Oscar, and Anthony are such a great crew down there. I don't think anybody can hold a candle to what you guys do on the border, and we're grateful for it. Enjoy CPAC, Ben Berkwam. I'm going to run a little promo because I know we're going to be out there, and I want to make sure everybody tunes in to Real America's Voice coverage. And then when we come back, the IRS is the largest collection agency in the world, and it just stepped up enforcement for 2025. If you owe back taxes or have unfiled returns, do not wait for the IRS to come after you. April 15th marks another tax year that has passed you by. Getting ahead of this now is the smart move. Getting ahead of this is the smart move. But never, never, never contact the IRS alone. Turn it over to the team at Tax Network USA, whether you owe $10 million, $10,000, or whatever number it may be. Tax Network USA's attorneys and negotiators have resolved over $1 billion in tax debt. Call 1-800-905-8000 or visit tnusa.com/RAV. Coming up next, Pete Hegseth has ordered an investigation into the botched Afghanistan withdrawal. We will speak to the family member of a service member killed during that botched withdrawal. And here is what you can expect at CPAC this week from us.
Live from Washington, D.C., welcome to
CPAC.
I can't hear you. We the people. United. Days of thunder.
This is a nice crowd.
This is electric.
Are you with us?
Join us this Wednesday through Saturday. Sponsored by Trump Collectible Knives.
I'm a faithful watcher of Real America's Voice.
That's where the news is.
Folks, another example of promises made, promises kept. President Trump is not going to leave Al-Qaeda alone, the Taliban alone, Hamas alone. If you are a terrorist, if you want to do American citizens harm, he will come get you. I'm talking about President Trump. He ordered a strike on Abu Hazma al-Yemeni, who is with the group Haras al-Din, a group affiliated with Al-Qaeda. This was in northwest Syria, and he took out this terrorist leader. And that, folks, is very, very good news that he was able to do just that. On the heels of that news, we get news that Pete Hegseth, our newest Secretary of Defense, is doing what we all wanted to do. You know, I vowed to never forget the 13 service members killed in that absolutely botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. The blood of those service members is on the hands of not just Joe Biden, but everybody involved in that withdrawal that had any role in planning it in such a horrendous fashion. those men and women never needed to die. So Pete Hegseth has vowed there will be an internal investigation inside the Pentagon to figure out exactly who's responsible. And of course, we want to make sure that this never, ever happens again. Well, on with me now, Gold Star family member of U.S. Marine Sergeant Nicole G., who was killed in that Afghanistan withdrawal during the Biden administration. Christy Shamblin is with us. Christy, welcome to the program. Christy, I would imagine this never gets easy. Well,
hi, I can't hear you.
Oh, Christy can't hear us. All right, let's do this. I'm gonna say I'm gonna have them take it back from you until they can figure out how you can hear me, and then we'll get you back on as soon as they can, as soon as you can, and they'll get it worked out, I'm sure. I want to take a little flashback though. This is the Biden administration basically claiming that everything was great, the withdrawal was perfect in the face of 13 service members dead? I don't think so.
We were clear-eyed about the risks. We planned for every contingency, but I always promised the American people that I would be straight with you. The truth is, this did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated.
That guy never really met with the families, never had any accountability for all of this. And then, of course, you have the U.S. Senate committee hearing where General Mark Milley, who I actually believe needs to be held accountable for treason, and I think the pardon that Joe Biden offered him is an admission of not just the Afghanistan withdrawal that was so botched. Was Mark Milley also tipping off the Chinese that he'd let them know if President Trump was going to do something? That, folks, is treasonous. But when it comes to Afghanistan, let's not forget Mark Milley's role in all of this.
You and I have discussed this. Would you use the term extraordinary success for what took place in August in Afghanistan?
That's the non-combatant evacuation, and I think one of the other senators said it very well. It was a logistical success, but a strategic failure. And I think those are two different terms.
All right, so this is the situation. We need accountability for this. There was never any accountability whatsoever. Joe Biden was so far gone. I believe he wanted out of Afghanistan so badly that he threw all hell to the wind, and 13 people died because of it. That, folks, is unacceptable. Joe Biden needs to be held accountable for that, and so many others need to be held accountable for that as well. All right, I want to bring back in now Gold Star family member of Sergeant Nicole Gee. She is her mother-in-law. Welcome back to the program, and thank you for coming on. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, it's so great to have you on the program. I would imagine doing interviews like this never, ever gets easy, but you have to take some sense of solace that Pete Hegseth, the new Secretary of Defense, says we're going to get an investigation going to finally get people held accountable. What went through your mind when you heard this?
Relief. I trust Pete Hegseth, and I think he's going to do our heroes justice and find out how this became a catastrophe and make changes so it doesn't happen again.
Did anyone within the Biden administration ever give you any answers at all? Did you ever hear from them?
Never. Not once did we hear from the administration at all. We never heard from, short of the day at Dover when he met us and looked at his watch repeatedly. That was the only interaction we had with the president. We never heard from the vice president. And anything we heard from any part of the administration was all finger pointing and just a refusal to look at facts that happened. And they did not want to admit that this was wrong. They wanted to call it a success. And in doing that, you know, they've made it possible for this to keep happening. And I'm extremely grateful for Pete Hegseth and President Trump for bringing this back into the spotlight.
You have to wonder how they can call it a success. I look at that beautiful young woman, your daughter-in-law, and the 12 other faces of those who lost their lives. There There's absolutely no way you can call this a success. I would think under any normal administration, there'd be somebody inside the Pentagon holding your hand along the way, trying to figure out what happened, if not for the sole fact you just don't want it to happen again.
Yes, and that was never the case with the administration. They ignored us and ignored us. We reached out to them looking for how they could call it a success, and they just never answered us. And I for the life of myself, can't understand why, except for the fact that we now know that the president, President Biden was not competent in his role. And we saw that when we met him at Dover. And it's a shame that more people didn't speak up sooner.
Yeah, it sure is. So, Christy, now you've got this investigation that's going to unfold. What do you hope comes out of it? Do you want people held accountable? Do you think there's generals that had a role in this, Mark Milley and the others? And what do you hope happens?
I hope for change so that this doesn't happen again, so that our service members are protected when they are overseas evacuating people in need, desperate people. I think that Milley's pardon is suspect, and it really raises a lot of questions in my head. And I do hope that somebody's held accountable. We've had other countries that participated that fired people in their armed services. Sweden is among them, and it's shocking to me that we don't follow the same suit to make some kind of change to make it better.
Can I ask you now how your family is doing? And has her family been taken care of? Are you getting what you needed? Not so much with the investigation. We know that's not happening. But is the military taking care of you and your family after she gave the ultimate sacrifice for all of us?
Her family, she had a large extended family that misses her very, very much. We will never be the same. Our lives were changed completely that day. But now what we hope for is change so that our future service members are safer. We know that she would do her sacrifice again. She was a Marine's Marine and very proud of the work she was doing. And we will continue to fight for her in her absence and make sure that other service members have a better shot at surviving.
Well, just know we are so grateful for her service and the sacrifice that she made, and we're certainly grateful for you and your voice of coming on here. And I do believe that spurs. Look, President Trump was always going to take this very, very seriously, but you and the other families have never given up on that, and I really do believe that plays a role in, once this administration had come in, the new one, of getting to the bottom of this, and I'm sure Pete Hegseth will. And so thank you so much, Christy Shamblin, for coming on tonight.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we pray, of course, for your daughter-in-law's soul as well. I'm so grateful for her service and your family and what you've gone through. All right, folks. How about AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens? It was created to champion the needs of Americans who believe in faith, family, and freedom. With over 2 million members, their mission is simple: protect the interests of freedom-loving Americans, safeguard senior benefits, and advocate for common sense policies. Membership includes the award-winning AMAC magazine, exclusive discounts on travel insurance and everyday services. And in honor of President Trump's first 100 days in office, AMAC is offering a 5-year AMAC membership for 47% off, normally $60. So join today for only $32. Visit amac.us/grant. Do that today. Take advantage of this very special offer, amac.us/grant. All right, what in the world is going on with all these plane crashes? Another one in Canada. Luckily, everyone survived. We'll talk about this and who, of course, the Democrats are blaming next. Welcome back, everyone. What in the world's going on with all these plane crashes? This, if you haven't seen the video, is unbelievable. It's in Toronto, Canada. It's a Delta flight coming from Minnesota, and literally, as you see there, careens off the runway, flips upside down. Miraculously, everyone survives. I think there was 3 people in critical condition, including a little baby. But imagine being in that situation, hanging upside down by your seatbelt. Boy, they are blessed to be alive. I'd say lucky. Lucky was a racehorse at Belmont. They were blessed to be alive, and there's no doubt about that. Pete Buttigieg, the former transportation secretary, what a jerk. This is what he tweets out. He says, the flying public needs answers. How many FAA personnel were just fired? What positions and why? Hey, ding-dong Buttigieg. This crash happened in Canada. It's not an FAA crash, not an FAA control tower. So what are you bringing that up? And by the way, according to new Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, he made it very clear. The firings have nothing to do with any of these plane crashes. This is what they write here, if we throw that up on the screen. He writes, here's the truth. The FAA alone has a staggering 45,000 employees. Less than 400 were let go, and they were all probationary, meaning they had been hired less than a year ago. 0 air traffic controllers and critical safety personnel were let go. But Pete Buttigieg wouldn't know anything about all that. Well, I'll bring in now aviation expert Jay Ratliff is with us. Jay, welcome to the program.
Good evening.
All right, so Jay, this is a wild story in Toronto. Seeing this plane, this could be anybody on any plane. As you look at this and assess what happened, are you getting any idea of how this went down?
Well, I mean, very little we know. And we know the investigation is going to go for 8 to 12 months before we have a final report. But we can look at the weather conditions to see if that might have played a part. But really, the video is, to me, the most telling. Because even though it's kind of ridiculous to draw any conclusions at this point in time, the question is, how did this aircraft end up on its top? In the 33 years I've been serving as an aviation analyst, 2 decades before in the industry, rare is it that we ever have an aircraft that ends up on its top, and especially when we do have no fatalities. And in this video, you can see the aircraft coming into land, and as it touches down, it appears that there may have been an issue with the main landing gear under the wing, the right landing gear, that may have collapsed, or perhaps the aircraft was blown off to the side of the runway. We don't know, but something caused that airplane to dip drastically to the starboard side. And that's what took place that had the wing come off. And then, of course, everything after that took place. So one of the things of many that the investigating team is going to be looking at, and this is being head up by the Canadian version of the National Transportation Safety Board, they're going to be looking at everything from the cockpit voice recorder, the flight data recorder, the 2 black boxes. They're going to be looking at all the video. They're going to be looking at the wreckage. They're going to be interviewing the pilots. They're going to be looking at every piece of data from a weather standpoint, airport conditions, runway conditions, all of it, to try to determine the sequence of events that took place here. And we'll find out what happened. We'll get a conclusive answer. But I think for me, primarily, looking at that right landing gear may have been where it all started.
Jay, traditionally, the fuel is carried in the wings, correct? I know one of the wings snapped off. Was that a good thing that the wing snapped off? Did that save lives, do you believe?
Well, you know, every aircraft has a point, a fracture point, where if something happens to a certain extent, the idea is a piece would break away versus compromising the fuselage integrity. So that's what we had here. But still, a great amount of force would have been required to snap that wing off. And part of the ongoing investigation is going to be exactly what caused that to happen. But when you had this take place on this Bombardier, a Canadian-built aircraft, it stayed intact. And it protected the passengers, which is exactly what we want. And I know all of us complain about those aircraft seats that are uncomfortable and getting smaller. But look, those things are rated up to, I think, 16 Gs of force. And the seats did what they were supposed to do, remained in place, kept passengers secured for the most part, for everyone who had their seatbelt on. So everything worked as it should have. And as crazy as it sounds, this could be a poster moment for just how safe aviation can be when you have all of the parts working as they're supposed to. And again, we're going to have to wait and see exactly what happened. But hats off to the Canadian responders at the airport there. They were out there quickly. Great job by the flight crew in getting passengers off the aircraft. And sadly, it takes... please.
Real quick, do you think the passengers had warning? Did the pilot know this was going to be a crash landing, or did this just happen on landing?
It just happened. And when you listen to the eyewitness reports of the people that were on board the aircraft, and many of them still shaken at the time, it was a matter of we're preparing for landing, hard landing. Moments later, we're hanging upside down like bats is how they described it from the ceiling, trying to figure out what in the world was going on. And, the flight attendants did a great job in making sure that those evacuation slides were disengaged before those doors went open. Because obviously, had that happened, you would have had the slide impeding a quick evacuation here. And look, we've got an aircraft that's on fire. You don't know how much time you have. And for all of the idiots that stopped to collect their personal belongings before they got off the aircraft, I'm sorry, that's a special brand of stupid. And we continue to see this happen time after time. And it's endangering the lives of everyone behind you. And I've been pushing the FAA and others to come up with some sort of penalty, punitive damage, something. When we've got a video of somebody dragging bags across the tarmac, how did they get those?
I mean, I'm with you. I don't know about fining the people. They just crashed in a plane. The last thing they need is a fine. But people don't use their noggin.
You endanger the lives
I hear you. Jay, I got to run because we're short on time. But I'm with you on that. You endanger people. That's really, really a big problem. Folks, we appreciate that. Coming up next, President Trump listed off a long list of federal debt inducing waste today. We break into that more. back, everyone. We have some breaking news to report. This is a truth from President Donald Trump. We'll throw it up on the screen. This just came out. Over the past 4 years, the Department of Justice has been politicized like never before, the president writes. Therefore, I've instructed the termination of all remaining Biden-era U.S. attorneys. We must clean house immediately and restore confidence. America's golden age must have a fair justice system. That begins today. Lord knows what that will do for many cases that are up in front of many federal judges if all the U.S. attorneys, Biden era, are gone. Good riddance, quite frankly. The president should have U.S. attorneys that represent the America First agenda, and that is what he's going to get. Thank you, Mr. President. Promises made, promises kept. All right, on with me now. Done with debt customer and media personality Jillian Barbary. Jillian, it's funny, done with debt. This is a great topic these days because we know the government certainly has all kinds of debt, but everyday folks do too. Jillian, welcome to the program.
Great to see you, Grant. It's so true. I was thinking earlier, it's such a pleasure to be here. And a few years ago, I wouldn't have been able to say much was a pleasure because, like a lot of Americans, I, too, was in debt. And so many people are in debt. And it's not because of luxurious spending. It's because of job loss or disease. Maybe you haven't planned for. So much chaos happened in my life, and it just happened at the same time. And so when you're not you lose a job, or you're getting divorced, or cancer's at your door, whatever the case is, and you haven't completely prepared for it, you can get yourself into a real bind. And that's what happened to me. And I love being a spokesperson because debt just isn't financial, as you know. It's really emotional as well. And it's sort of those things that we keep to ourselves. So I like to tell people when they say, what is done with debt? I always say it's like your own little personal team of DOGE, going in there and cleaning the house and really figuring out what they can do on your behalf with the credit card companies, with the banking institutions, with all of the agencies that have a grip over your life right now when you're just trying to live and support your family and put food on the table, right? So at the end of the day, whether it's the mortgage or the rent, things are not meeting in the middle because of external situations that are hard or out of your control. Done with debt comes in, and they act as that buffer because, Grant, in this country, debt is big money. Big money, not for us, unfortunately, right? So they'll come in and they'll act as that buffing zone, and they'll run defense for you, essentially, and they'll stop all the harassing letters and phone calls, and they will help put an end to your debt. It just takes a little bit of time, and you have to stay honest with them. Just get on the phone. They'll give you a free consultation right up, and you just tell them financially where you are. In a lot of cases, they can cut interest rates. They can, when they do checks and balances, in some cases, they can wipe out your debt. They'll tell these people, listen, it's either pennies on the dollar or pound sand. We have nothing for you. So it's, you want to take a little bit of blood from this rock or nothing. And chances are they will take something. And in some cases, they will get those penalty fees erased. So you have like a little bit of a clearer mind sitting down with your family at night. And I'll tell you, it just takes that one step to pick up the phone, because the longer you wait, the worse it gets, right? They have time on their hands. This is their job, is just to wait, tick, 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 right? And then they'll call you up again, or they'll send the harassing letters. That's their job. So it doesn't matter that, it's out of your mind in your glove compartment for the meantime, but you're a number on there, they'll just go to somebody else, and then eventually you come up again. Done with debt, they've done such an amazing job, Grant, that they've even gotten customers to leave with money in their pocket at the end of the month. It's really about you taking the first step. Yeah.
Well, I think that's what it takes for so many things in life. It's the first step. You got to make the decision to do it. Don't let embarrassment get in the way. Believe me, I'm sure there's not a story they haven't heard before. So make sure they do it.
I was just going to tell you, I'm in Hollywood. There are so many broke people out here pretending.
Sure. Hey, you know what? I live in Dallas, I'm going to tell people how to find you and the team over there, and they've done so much great stuff for Jillian and so many of our Real America's Voice viewers who have used now Done With Debt, and we're grateful for their support of this program. DoneWithDebt.com. Talk to an expert for free. Again, it's DoneWithDebt.com. All right, is New York Mayor Eric Adams becoming one of us? He stuffed the media earlier. We have the video next. You asked, and we heard you, America.
Real America's Voice is coming to iHeartMedia.
Yes, Real America's Voice is now breaking through the white noise of the mainstream media.
Just download the iHeart app, and you'll have all of us right at your fingertips.
Scan the QR code and start streaming RAV anywhere you want.
Real America's Voice, available whenever you need us.
It's never been easier to stay connected with the voices you trust.
RAV on iHeart means you can take us with you wherever you go.
This is huge. The truth on iHeart. Ready whenever you are.
From Charlie Kirk to Steve Bannon, Jack Posobiec to Grant Stinchfield, you'll find all your favorite RAV hosts in one place.
You can listen on Spotify, Apple, Pandora, or Amazon. RAV is now available everywhere you get your podcasts. All you need to do is scan the QR code right now.
Download the iHeart app today and get ready for Real America's Voice.
Scan the QR code and join the RAV movement.
Well, folks, I don't really know what to think about New York Mayor Eric Adams. I do think the Biden administration went after him for some pretty petty stuff. Now, Justice Department says it's dropping the case. Well, the media is furious over this because they don't like him. Watch this.
Mayor Adams, why don't you take questions from the press?
Just make a pad for us, that's all.
Why don't you take questions from the press?
Y'all liars. What are we lying about exactly?
Yeah, what are we lying about exactly?
You're liars. I'll tell you what you're lying about. Your mother wears army boots. That's what you're lying about. There's nothing but jackals outside of New York City Hall. Oh, boy. The mainstream media. I'm glad I'm not a part of that anymore. I was for a long time, folks. Not anymore. Stinchfield's Army rolls. We'll see you tomorrow night.